Hi, and welcome to another edition of Camille's Corner. I'm Bridget, your host. So today we're going to talk about the word empath. Empath. So people, a lot of people don't really know much about being an empath. And so this may be new to some people, but the ones who know and the ones who get it, they get it. And the ones who don't, they don't. So, what I'm going to try to do is give a little bit of a definition and kind of go into some of the characteristics of being an empath. And you can try to identify yourself with any of them, and you may even realize that you're one. Who knows? But I am. And so, of course, this subject interests me. And so, first, I'm going to give you a little bit of the definition and give you a little bit of some stats, and then we'll get into the actual characteristics of it. And then, of course, I'll give you some examples as to what happened to me to give you an example of how it affects me. Okay? So, empath. The definition is a person who is highly attuned to the energies and emotions of those around them. Another definition is an individual who feels more empathy than the average person. And that's, I guess, subject to, what's going on around and what's happening. So, that's definitely subject to what's going on or, how you're feeling about a particular situation, of course. It says they are said to feel what others are feeling so deeply that they absorb or take on the emotions themselves, often at the expense of their own emotions. So I can attest to that. For me, when something happens, traumatic happens, for me, it takes on a physical illness. Um, I really don't like that about myself. I'm just going to be honest. It is what it is. But I'm just giving you a little bit of the definition and give you some examples as to how I found out that I was one. Okay, so some traits are feeling drained when exposed to intense emotions. Check. Avoid emotionally impactful media. Check. Dislike crowds. Check. Regularly feel burned out. Check. Experience emotions without knowing why. Check, check, and check. Let's see what else. Get anxious easily. Check. Crowded spaces are overwhelming. Check. Can't tolerate loud noises. Check. Tend to love hard and intensely. Experience deep feelings of connection. Check. Only 1 to 2% of the population experience this type of sensitivity. And we're usually attracted to narcissists. Check. So I'm part of the 1 to 2%. So this is just the definition that Google gave me. But for me, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about certain things, give examples. So, for example, there was a time when myself and my ex-husband, then husband, this was a time between when we split up and then the divorce. It was in between that time. So sometimes, you kind of backslide and go that way, or you do have that what if, maybe he has something different to say this time, so you want to try to give that opportunity. So he invited me down, um, down to where he is from and where his parents live. And I was curious. I wanted to see him. So I went and we got there and the conversation was light, really wasn't any, talk about getting together or back together. It was just more like small talk. And I was thinking and hoping that eventually the conversation will turn into something productive for me to have driven this long way to get here. So while we were talking, my stomach just started hurting so bad. Like I was doubled over. I was hurting so bad. And I mean, I was like, dog, what's wrong? Do I have to use the bathroom? I mean, I was just like, I was playing it off at first because I was trying to pretend as if, I wasn't hurting that bad. But I was like, I got to go to the bathroom. So I went to the restroom, tried to use the bathroom, and nothing happened. TMI, but my stomach still was hurting. So I was like, when I get out of here, I'm going to have to leave because I don't know what's going on and I may have to take some medication. I don't know. So when I come out of the bathroom, he's there and another lady is there. I'm going to say his girlfriend at the time. I'm not sure. However, she was sitting in his lap and wanted to know why I was there. And I said, I was invited. And, but you guys have a nice day. So I got up and proceeded to walk past them to go outside and get in my car. And he follows behind me, telling me to tell this lady tell her that we were just talking about um, our daughter. Just tell her it was about our daughter. And I was like, that's between you and her. You tell her what you want to tell her. And I got in the car, clicked, and closed the door and left. So in retrospect, of course, it was like my body was telling me something was wrong. Something is wrong with the situation. And it was. And it was right. And I should have listened. But it didn't happen right away. It happened after I got there. But I guess the fact that she was on the way there and I didn't know it. And my body was telling me that something's about to happen. But I didn't know. I wasn't aware of how I was. I didn't associate myself with being an empath at the time. So I didn't really know. So that's one example. Okay. Let me give you another example. I had a friend, a classmate actually that I went to school with, and she had cancer. And she was on Facebook, and I kept up with her, throughout her treatment and throughout whatever she had to do or deal with while she was fighting for her life for cancer. Some days, it was good, and she'll put that on there. And then some days it wasn't so good, and she put that on there as well. And so I kept up with her, and I was praying for her. And I was looking forward to hearing her updates because I was just so sure that she was going to make it. You know what I'm saying? She has such a positive attitude. And I don't know if they caught it in time or if she was just thinking positive and really knew it was, didn't look well. But either way, she stayed positive. And then all of a sudden, there were no more videos. So later I found out that she had passed away. So of course, I'm down about that. She was a classmate. She was a friend. I mean, we weren't the closest of friends, but we were friends. And so when I found out about her arrangements, I was like, okay, she was a classmate. So I'm wondering if any of the other classmates were planning to go to her funeral. And the ones that I knew, I asked them, they're like, no, they're not going, da 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 da. So I felt it in my heart to go. So I did. And when I got there, I knew that a cancer patient, you know, loses their hair and they may, get really, really small and lose a lot of weight. And so I had this picture in my mind of what she may look like. However, my plan was not to see her that way. My plan was to remember her the way she was the last time I saw her in person. So the service starts, we're in there, And, they're doing the eulogy. They're doing everything that they're supposed to do, that they do at a funeral. And so at the end of the funeral, they opened up the casket again, and they had ushers to come down the aisle. And of course, I already mentioned that I was not planning on going down there to view the body. I was adamant about that. I was not going to do that. So when they came to our row, the ushers, and they were like pointing in the direction of going toward the casket. And I was like, no, I'm like, no. And I almost pushed the lady down trying to get on the other side of her. But I understood that she was trying to keep the flow. You know what I'm saying? Okay, even if you don't, at least go that way because all the traffic is going this way. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I kept saying, okay, I'm not going to look. I'm not going to look. So, of course, what did I do? I looked. And she didn't look anything like I thought she would. She was my age. She was full of life prior to her getting, cancer. And she liked to keep up with her looks, as most women do. But when I looked at her, she didn't have a wig on and she didn't have any makeup on. And I know to some people that's frivolous and that's not really important. And that's fine if you feel that way, but not everybody feels that way. And I felt like she would want to have been seen if it was the last time anybody's ever going to see her, that they would try to make her look like she did when she was healthy. But she didn't. And it threw me for a loop. I mean, I was shocked. And I was shocked to the point to where when I was leaving, walking away from the casket, headed out of the church, my legs, my arms, and my head were all trembling, just trembling. I was just shaking physically. I could barely get down the steps of the church. And someone saw me and helped me get to my car. I mean, I was physically trembling. And there was no words that I could explain to someone as to what happened. I have no idea. I walked in the church fine, but when I saw her and I walked out of the church, it was devastating. And it took me probably about an hour or two to get back to myself. That was a traumatic experience. And so the fact that I became physically ill, I thought, well, what in the world is wrong with me? Why on earth? And some people may think, okay, you're just being extra. Well, sometimes I am extra. Sometimes. And I can go along with that. Sometimes I am. But something like that, you can't fake. You can't make up. I couldn't make it up to be extra. Like, I may be extra, but I'm not insensitive. So if something happens to someone, and I'm not going to make it about me, but I literally could not walk back to my car without the aid of someone helping me. It was ridiculous. And I promise you, that was awful. It was awful. It was awful. So when something like that happens, it overwhelms me. It overwhelms me to the point to where, like I said, I get physically sick. So let's go on to something a little bit more recent. Um, this isn't quite as recent, but I know back in the day, whenever my daughter was, out doing her thing, and she was young, and we all were young, and we all made some mistakes. But it was some things that she was going through that my mom and my sister would get involved in, and then they call me. And when they call me, they would be upset, crying, and it would be just the most. And it would get to the point to where I would just bust into tears about some of the things that they may have said. And some of it may not have been all the way true. I don't know. Nobody knows this but my daughter and the Lord. So, but what was said to me was extreme enough for me to weep. I was weeping from some of the stuff that I was hearing that they were saying that she was doing. And I would talk to people about it. Well, I won't say people, to my closest friends. And they're like, well, Bridget, you probably just need to pray to get that off of you. In other words, let it go. Let whatever she's doing, whatever she's dealing with, whatever she's having to go through, let her go through it and give her to the Lord and let the Lord work it out. And I tell you, before I learned to do that, I would be in bed for days. I would be sad. I mean, like I always tell people, if it were not for the Lord on my side, because it drained me so much that I didn't feel like doing anything. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to get out of that bed. I didn't even want to answer the phone because the stories kept getting more dramatic and more dangerous. And I just couldn't hear it anymore. I couldn't. I couldn't physically deal with it. Like I just couldn't. I mean, so that example goes along with the days that where you feel that you need to retreat in order to refresh. You know what I'm saying? It. I have to retreat to refresh and renew because it would take so much out of me, so much out of me. And so I'll give this one last example. Uh, my best friend slash my cousin, who was fighting for her life on a previous video about friendship. I explained that she was dealing with some serious health issues and she was fighting for her life. Well, she lost her battle and she went on to be with the Lord. But before she did, we had a circle of prayer around her. And we had her father, which he lives in another state, and he's very much elderly, so he couldn't make the trip. So we tried to make him, where her daughters tried to make sure that he was involved as much as he could be in what was going on with her. So when we were saying the prayer, he began to cry. He began to wail. He began to set off an awful sound of sadness and grief. And it took everything in my power not to fall to pieces, because it wasn't that I was feeling sympathy for him. You know what I'm saying? Okay, you're losing your daughter. I sympathize with that. But with empathy, you feel what he feels. So when he was wailing, I, in turn, was sitting there. I was standing, rather. And while I was standing, it's like something just came over me, a overwhelming feeling of feeling what he's feeling. I doubled over. I thought I was going to pass out, actually. I really did. Because I'll never ever say to a person that's gone through something that I never have, to say, oh, I know what you're going through. No, you don't. If you've never been there, you don't know what a person's going through. If it's never happened to you, you don't. And I believe wholeheartedly in that. So when people say that, then I'm expecting you to have gone through it and know. You're not just saying something that you think. So I don't know how he felt because I've never lost a child. But when I tell you I could feel his emotion to where it had me physically doubled over, that I had to be placed in a chair and they were wiping my face off, wiping my nose. I was a mess because first of all, I love my cousin. I loved her with all my heart. And her dad's elderly. And I know how much she loved her dad. So, and when he, was actually, I feel like he was just beginning to know that he's never going to hear his daughter's voice again. And I think that hit him like a ton of bricks. And he became overwhelmed with emotion. And because he became overwhelmed with emotion, so did I. I became overwhelmed. I was there thinking that I was going to be of some comfort to her daughters and other family members, but I think, I was worse than they were 100 times over. Now, they may have had their own, private time to grieve and may have had, a moment of debilitating grief. But that day, during that prayer and him wailing like that, that was an overwhelming feeling of grief. I was overcome with grief. And so, just give me a second. Because that was recent. So, after all the things that I have, examples that I've given, and the traits of an empath, then you may be able to search yourself to see if you fall into that category. I don't like drama. I don't like drama. If the situation comes up and, some people are going back and forth, or something that, you know what I'm saying, is going on, and there's a lot of back and forth with it, I will refuse to join. Will refuse to contribute to any of the chaos. I will retreat, and you won't even see me for a while. People will be like, well, my family mostly, I, I called you and you didn't answer the phone. No, I didn't, because I didn't want to hear the latest. I didn't. I couldn't, because I was depleted. You know what I'm saying? I had to refresh myself. I had to renew. I had to get in my closet and kind of like, fight for myself back to being to me, back to being me. And I don't know. And of course, this is stuff that I found out as an adult. I mean, this is just who I am. And I don't know if time, life, and experience and, other things contributed to me being this way. I don't know. I haven't the slightest. And I knew it, and I recognized that I was this way, but I was avoiding it, denying it. How some people say, well, you're in denial. Yeah, I was in denial for a while. And so I ran from it. But it's like, it's me now. This is who I am. So I have to pick and choose what I want to be a part of. I have to be selective as to what I'm going to subject myself to or listen to or be a part of. I have to consciously make that effort to protect myself. And that in itself is a job. It's a job. It's a job, man. It's a job, right? So people that can identify with this, you're already there. You're already an empath. And and I suggest you not run from it. I suggest you just take it in, roll with the punches, and do what's best for you. Do what's best for you. People may not understand why you're doing certain things or why you're trying to not be around certain people or certain energies. They may not never understand. And, I'm okay with that. If you don't understand, then I get it. It's okay. Hey, it ain't for everybody. And some people don't even believe in it. And hey, that's up to you too. So, whatever you need to do, whatever you need to make yourself sleep better at night. But for the ones who are, we're the ones that's actually having to deal with it. We're the ones that's going through the emotion. We're the ones that's going to have to back away and see how things work out. And then I'll get back in when I have replenished and renewed myself. And I don't know. Like I said, sometimes I don't like that about myself. And it is what it is, right? But I'm learning day by day to love who I am, to love me enough to protect what's near and dear to me, and that's my heart and my feelings. And that whole loving hard and loving deeply and intensely, I married a narcissist and then I divorced one. So check, 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 right? Um, Feeling to where they're so deep. I was involved with someone whom I thought was my soulmate. I just loved him. I just loved him. I just loved him. It didn't matter what he did. I just loved him. And when I was trying to break up with him, I couldn't. I was overwhelmed with grief, overwhelmed with sadness. It was like, to be honest, it almost felt like that they had a root on me, like somebody had cast a spell on me. And I was thinking that back then, because I didn't know any better. But for whatever reason, I could not shake him. I don't know what it was. I mean, and then sometimes people are like, well, just don't think about him. Just, go out with somebody else, and enjoy yourself and don't let him be the one that's, got you feeling like this. And I'm thinking, yeah, you're right. But it didn't stop the pain. It didn't stop me from feeling like that. I mean, I even knew people that would be in a relationship. I mean, in love enough to love the guy to marry him. But then when they broke up, she was like, on to the next. I was like, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. My heart and feelings would be so grateful if that were that simple. But it never was that simple for me. It never was. And anybody that knew me or knows me or knew me during that period, they just couldn't understand why I could never get over this person because my feelings were so intense. My love was so intense that I couldn't see past it. So I just wanted to share a little bit about this, a little bit about me. And all the topics that I talk about are not going to be about me. They aren't. But I just thought it was so interesting because, like, now when I talk about being an empath and I may mention it to somebody and they're like, what is that? You know? And then if you go into detail, like I did about the definition, oh, that's just, nobody really goes through that and they really don't take it serious and they don't get it. And they may never, but um, you guys know, you know. And yeah, this one's about me because I'm definitely that way and I was intrigued about it and I wanted to give the definition and for you to search yourself to see, if you think that's what you are or who you are. A lot of times we don't necessarily get to pick and choose, our traits. Sometimes we don't get to pick and choose. It's kind of like it is what it is. So, off to all you empaths out there, we got to be united. We got to be, hold each other up, and represent because we are people too. And being an empath is real and it does happen. And I can name several more examples, but time is not going to allow. And I'm not going to dig all those feelings back up again. Because sometimes it'll stick to you just talking about it. Sometimes talking about it frees you. And then sometimes it makes you reflect so much so that you start to feel those feelings again. And it's like, oh, hold it. Nope, nope, nope. So that's my time, you guys. So if you're an empath, hey, welcome to the club. If you're not, try to be sensitive to the people that say that they are and be kind, be nice. You never know what a person's dealing with. So try not to be harsh, I love you guys. Peace. I wanted to take this time to introduce you to my new unit. The information's in the bio.